We're the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and we are dedicated to lower taxes, less waste, and more accountable government. My name is Chris Sims. I'm the Alberta Director for the CTF. I'm here with my dear friend, Franco Terrazzano. He's our Federal Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. We have him stationed at a forward operating base known as Ottawa. I sometimes also call it Mordor. Okay, Franco, we've got tons and tons of supporters, and one of the coolest things that I love doing is asking them what they think about all of these fights. So, which taxes do they dislike the most? What do they want to see done with the size of our behemoth of a government? Which premiers are doing the best in their books? We've got so much ground to cover here. What jumped out at me with our survey that we did with the Taxpayers Federation first was a huge support to get rid of the ban on gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, turns out Canadians don't want the government telling us what cars we can and cannot buy, right? Who would have known other than everyone? Okay, so look, let me just take a step back, right? Like this survey is so useful for us. Like, number one, we get tens of thousands of responses. Okay, so thanks so much for taking time out of your day. But number two, right? The House of Commons is going to be sitting it's right around the corner. It starts again in September. The circus is back in town, and you guys are giving us our marching orders. So thank you for that. But look, back to the gas and diesel ban, right? So the government is going to be banning the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles by 2035. The restrictions start to kick in next year. But guess what? Our supporters are ready to fight against it, right? 97% of our supporters are against the ban on the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles. And look, I love that because I hate this policy so much. It's like half-baked. I mean, look, like, number one is obviously just personal freedom, right? Like, people want to have the ability to be able to choose what type of car that they need to buy that works best for their family, but then also their geographical location, right? Like, some parts of Canada get pretty cold, Chris, and I'm definitely looking at where you're stationed out there in beautiful Alberta. But number two is the cost, right? Like, how many billions and billions and tens of billions, probably hundreds of billions of dollars will this ban cost, right? Think of all the different subsidies for battery manufacturers, right? The subsidies for electric vehicles, all the money the government's going to have to pour into new infrastructure, transmission lines, yada, 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 right? Like, whenever you hear the government talk about the ban on the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles, I think the one question that has to come to your mind is like, how much is my power and tax bill going to go up to pay for this boondoggle?
The quick answer is a lot. The government itself did a study on this, and it's like $300 billion with a B that we do not have. And for folks who just trying to picture this, like here in Alberta, even it's strange saying this in Alberta because you think we'd be an energy powerhouse, but unfortunately we're not because of a whole bunch of other reasons. In the middle of winter, I'll get these warnings on my phone saying, everybody don't use your toaster. Nobody use your hair dryer. We're going to have a brownout or a blackout. Now imagine everybody having battery powered cars. I used to call them Trudeau trolleys. They're probably like carny cars now. Imagine everybody having to plug those things in. Like, how much juice are you going to need? So much electricity that we do not have, and we don't have the money to build. And it was the federal government itself that said, just a cool $300 billion plus interest, because we'd have to borrow all of that against our debt, which is super crazy. So I'm not surprised, frankly, that 97% of the people that we surveyed said, how about we toss this ban? Quickly, I know that we've got the new session of Parliament coming up. Everybody's gearing up for it in Ottawa. People are probably excited because y'all are a bunch of nerds. So are you sensing that this policy could be gone? Like, are you hearing anything about it? Are you hopeful that this is something Carney could be a pragmatist about and get rid of?
Well, look, the one thing that's going to keep this in the news is that it's pretty clear the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the party, is going to rail against it, right? Like, he's been on the record saying he's going to launch a campaign to fight back against the government's ban on the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles. Now, look, the only silver lining with this half-baked policy is that it's so ridiculous that, like, I just don't see how the government can do it, right? Like, it's going to cost so much. It's so not feasible. That's like the only silver lining, that it's so crazy. I just don't know how it's even possible. But like, look, the problem is that it looks like the current government wants to go full steam ahead, or full solar panel ahead on this thing. And it's going to end up costing Canadians billions and billions of dollars. And like, what do you always say, Chris? Like, we have unmoney, right now, right? More than $1 trillion in debt, interest charges costing more than $1 billion every week. Like, how are governments going to pay for this? Right? Like, expect, as I said, your power and tax bill to go way up if the government keeps going ahead with this boondoggle.
Yeah, big time. I just suddenly pictured Homer Simpson's car. I think he had a solar panel on top of it. But anyway. All right. Another big one. And this is a bit of hope here, okay? And
Hmm.
it is the carbon tax in the survey. So just again, I need to hit pause here because tax fighters who are listening to this show and watching this show on YouTube, by the way, remember to like this show, subscribe to it, and share it with your friends. It was tax fighters like our viewers that pushed back so hard on the carbon tax that they made Mark Carney, the dude who was the special envoy to the United Nations on this exact topic, scream uncle on the carbon tax. So that is why we've got about 20 cents off per liter of gasoline right now compared to last summer. Because as we live and breathe right this very second in time, we don't have a consumer carbon tax. So what were our surveys looking like when it comes to the carbon tax and fighting the industrial carbon tax?
Yeah, I'm glad you prefaced it with that, right? Because like, look, also Carney didn't end all carbon taxes, right? He was on the record saying he wants to change the carbon tax, right? So he got rid of that consumer carbon tax, the one you directly paid on your heating bill, or that you pay directly at the pumps when you're fueling up your car. But we still have what's called as the industrial carbon tax, a hidden carbon tax applied on Canadian businesses like oil and gas companies, refineries, utilities, also like fertilizer plants,
Yep.
right? So, like, look, there's still a carbon tax in place, and Carney's given every indication that he just wants to crank up that hidden carbon tax on Canadian businesses. Well, I'm very happy because our supporters, 86%, are against the industrial carbon tax, right? So the vast majority, 86% are against it. And now another thing that makes me happy with the answers I see in this survey is like you'll remember that throughout the campaign and the Liberal leadership race, Carney was like, "Oh, don't worry, folks. You won't pay this carbon tax. Don't worry. It'll be, companies, Canadian businesses." Well, look, Canadians, our supporters, aren't buying that spin, right? 97% of the survey respondents said that, look, companies are going to pass on most or some of the costs to consumers through higher prices. Another interesting part, right? So, first of all, the vast majority of our CTF supporters aren't buying Carney's spin, nor should they. But 90% also said that because of the industrial carbon tax, they're concerned about businesses leaving Canada, right? And that's a really good insight because remember, the White House, Washington D.C., doesn't have carbon tax,
Nope.
right? So, like, look, Carney's carbon tax will push Canadian entrepreneurs to leave Canada and increase or set up shop in the United States. So, really, Carney's carbon tax is the worst of both worlds: higher prices for you and fewer jobs for Canadians.
You really hit the nail on the head there, and I wanted to put a point on it more so. During the last federal election, I saw something I'd never seen before in my life, and that is a labor union, like standing up clearly online in public saying, "We are endorsing the blue team here because they're the only ones promising to obliterate all carbon taxes and not have an industrial carbon tax." So the pipe workers, okay, who work with the steel mills and stuff around Hamilton, which is closer to you right now in Ontario. Hello, Premier Doug Ford. Time to wake up from your nap on this. They came out and they endorsed the Conservatives. Why? Because they said that Prime Minister Mark Carney's industrial carbon tax would, quote, decimate their industry. And they were worried that those jobs were going to pack up and head exactly where you just said, Franco, south to the United States. Because it just makes sense. You've got a huge country like Canada with a huge industrial carbon tax, or you have the United States that's vowing to never have one. Where are you going to put your money? So it isn't just the Taxpayers Federation who are warning about the industrial carbon tax. It's literally a labor union that was
Mhm.
so worried about this carbon tax that they endorsed the blue team. So really interesting to see that stat there coming from our survey with our supporters. I wanted to move on here to media funding. And if
Yeah.
anybody's new to the show, you probably already know that the CBC is taking $1.4 billion from you just this year. But you may not know that a huge chunk of the mainstream media is now also on government payroll. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars worth of government payroll and subsidies here. So interesting to see some numbers coming from our supporters saying, yeah, we don't like that very much.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, so to take one quick step back, we also just asked our supporters, like, what do you think about government spending in general?
Oh,
And they said 95% said government spending is too high. So
wow.
there you go. But look, to the question about the CBC, the state broadcaster, and just media subsidies more broadly, look, close to 80% said defund the CBC completely. A bunch of others said cut funding, but close to 80% said defund the CBC completely. And again, close to 80% said completely end all taxpayer subsidies going to the media.
And
Right? So
that's
right
it.
around,
Yeah.
yeah, so right around close to 80% said defund the CBC entirely and end all subsidies to the media. And look, like the government should be paying the media,
No.
right? Like at all. Like Chris, you go on a little bit of a tirade, like a little rant about the proper role of an independent and free press in a second. But like, look, first of all, like Canadian taxpayers, Canadians in general, should be able to voluntarily choose who their money is going towards, right? Which media corporation, by deciding on like who to subscribe to, by deciding on who to pay for different types of subscriptions. Like we shouldn't be forced to fund media organizations that we have absolutely no interest in watching or getting news from. But also too, like think about the smaller media businesses, whether that's independent media or even some of the private sector stations out there. They shouldn't have their tax dollars funding behemoths like the CBC, their competitors, right? So for those very easy reasons to understand, like there should be absolutely no government or taxpayer funding going to any media corporation.
Yeah, exactly. To your point on the idea of the CBC being a behemoth that skews the market, that has been the case now for years and years and years. And before some of the, in private media companies, I'm using the term lightly now, started
Hmm.
actually going on government dole, they were much more principled when they said, hey, why is the CBC eating up a whole bunch of ad revenue, taking on ads? They won't even tell us how much they're spending on ads. We're having to fight the CBC in court because that company is refusing to tell taxpayers who are paying the tab how much they're spending in advertising. So your point is exactly right, Franco. They've been skewing the market for a long time. And now we're at this unfortunate moment in history where on one side of this whole censorship vice, the government has a whole bunch of censorship laws where they're trying to, regulate who can hear, see, and say what on the internet. But on the other side of it, they've just backed the money truck up for a
Hmm.
whole bunch of media companies. And I can't stress enough, as a journalist for my entire life, that is a direct conflict of interest. Journalists must not be paid by the government. It is journalists' role to hold the government to account, to speak truth to power, as the kids say. That's actually what the term free press comes from. That doesn't mean like a whole bunch of old-timey newspapers on a stand for free. That means free from government, influence and money and control and interference. So that should not be happening. I'll put it this way. Even if it were the late Rex Murphy, rest his soul, reading the news, and Don Cherry reading the sports, I might like that personally more. It shouldn't be government funded. Okay?
Yeah.
That should be independently funded. So, what was the stat there? Close to 80% of our supporters want that
Yeah,
gone?
close to 80% said defund the CBC completely and completely end the media subsidies. Chris, you mentioned online censorship.
Yeah.
About 90% of, our Canadian Taxpayers Federation supporters oppose online censorship. So there you go. About 90%.
I'm so proud of them. I might get weepy over that one. Okay, let's move to accountability. These numbers jumped off of the sheet for me when I took a look at it because not to rub it in, but I am here in Alberta, and we do have
Why are you turning the knife,
I'm
Chris?
so sorry. You have to come back and visit this soon. So, here in Alberta, we have recall legislation,
Hmm.
meaning we can fire a politician or at least try to fire a politician between elections, meaning we can hold a by election in between elections. That is at the provincial level, the city level, and at the school board level.
Amazing.
It is amazing, and it's a lot of hard work from tax fighters here in this region. I'm super proud of them. We also have referendums. You might have heard that there's a referendum that's brewing out here in Alberta.
No, must have missed it.
It's super weird. And even without that topic, there's referendums on other stuff. Like we have the Taxpayer Protection Act, and if for some reason some politician wanted to have a PST imposed on Albertans, they'd have to win a referendum from the people first. Good
Good
luck with
luck.
that. I know, right? So we asked our supporters nationally what they think about referendums and recall legislation. What were they saying?
Oh, I love it. 94% support referendum legislation. 89% support recall legislation. So, I mean, huge numbers. So, hey, any politician or political party out there federally, trying to get some good ideas. I don't know who you might be. Maybe push for recall and referendum legislation.
Dude, that's in like those are A grades. You're saying it's a high 80s and low 90s? Those are the
Well, yeah, referendum is 94% support referendum legislation. So
I
that's real
love
good.
that
And
so
yeah,
much.
recall legislation 89%.
That's outstanding. So A's and A pluses there. So yeah, somebody please steal our homework and push for recall legislation and referendum legislation because ultimately it's we the people, right? We're the taxpayers, we're the voters, we're the ones that are living here. It should be up to us with a lot of
Yeah.
these topics and a lot of these questions. Plus, it would just annoy the Eastern elites so much that I mostly want to do it out of spite. Okay, let's move on here. We went to accountability. Oh, the bureaucracy. One of your favorite things to
Yes.
talk about. All of your friends
Yes.
who work for the
Yes.
government.
Okay, so we asked a question like, hey, well, how do you feel about the salaries of government bureaucrats? 93% of CTF supporters said it too high. 93%. Okay, then we asked, what should happen to bureaucrat salaries? Okay, 51% said pay cuts of more than 5%.
Good.
Good.
Outstanding.
17% said pay cuts between 1 and 5%. 27% said pay freeze. And and only 0.5% said pay increase. So
So
look,
did
our supporters know that they're paying for way too many bureaucrats that are overpaid, right? Like it's
0.5%.
said a pay increase. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that Mark Carney has signed up for our updates and he filled out our survey.
Yeah, look, hey, let me just also add a little bit of accountability into this bureaucracy section because look, so the vast majority of provinces, there's only two provinces that don't have a sunshine list, okay? Quebec and Prince Edward Island. And every other province has one. And a sunshine list is a compensation disclosure list, right? That every year it provides taxpayers with, how many of the government employees are the top earners, right? For example, making $100,000 or more, right? And then as a taxpayer, right, it's your money. You deserve to know how many highly paid bureaucrats that you're paying for, right? That's transparency 101, government accountability 101, sunshine list. Now, the federal government, unlike the vast majority of provinces, does not have a sunshine list. Okay, so we asked our supporters, would you support a federal sunshine list? 98% of our supporters said yes, we need a federal sunshine list. 98%.
That's outstanding. Again, if somebody wants to steal our homework, this would be great. Actually, I don't know. Do we have a political party that's pushing this yet?
I don't think we do, Chris. I don't, and I'm just saying I don't think it's like maybe I missed something,
I don't
buried
think you
all the way
did.
down in the annex, but
Mm-hmm. I don't think we do yet. And I don't know about you, but I've been glancing at headlines occasionally. And now the dude who's the leader of the opposition doesn't have his riding around Ottawa anymore. I'm just saying that it might be easier to champion a reduction in salary for federal bureaucrats and a sunshine list for federal bureaucrats, which are all paid for by taxpayers, from, say, Battle River Crowfoot versus
just thrown at a random place in Canada.
well, I mean, it's right there. It's hard to miss and it's huge. So I'm just saying it would be a really good thing for political parties to pick this up because, again, this is all of our money. And you told me once, did you say that this blows my mind? That if the bureaucracy, I'm going based off memory, had grown at pace with our population
Yep.
instead of grotesquely ballooning the way that it did, we'd save like $7 billion. Was that in total? Or
Yeah,
you?
7 billion a year. 7 billion a year. Right? The government added 99,000 extra bureaucrats. So just the number of bureaucrats grew by like 38% since 2016. Just the number, not the cost, just the number. Grew by 38%. Canada's population grew by 16%, right? So if the bureaucracy had grown in line with population, there'd be about 60,000 fewer federal paper pushers, and taxpayers would save $7 billion a year.
Sorry, that is
Yeah.
just you shock me sometimes. That's just
Gross.
disgusting. That is totally gross. Okay, speaking of gross, let's talk about the Senate. Super fans of the Senate, the Royal Chamber, Red Chamber,
Yeah.
amongst our supporters
Okay.
here with the Taxpayers Federation.
Oh, okay. So this is just funny to me, right? So we ask a question. I just love this. Okay. So Trudeau appointed about 90 senators while in charge, right? And we asked, how valuable do you think the Senate is to Canadians in its current form? Okay. 63% said very useless. 26% said somewhat useless. Only 1% said very valuable. I love it. Hilarious.
I think some of my old broadcast colleagues got a hold of the survey and they answered the 1%.
And I think I'm rounding up too. Like, yeah.
Very useful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm picturing them filling out the survey right now. Okay. And for folks who didn't catch what he just said there, and for folks who are new to the show, the Senate is often referred to as the upper chamber, okay? When legislation goes through the House of Commons, okay? There's green carpet on the floor because it's supposed to represent grass, okay, from England. That was the commoners. Then it goes to the Senate for approval. The Senate is literally a representation of the royal chamber. That's why there's red carpet and a throne at the front. Not joking. That's why when there was the speech from the throne with His Majesty King Charles III, he did it in the Senate. Okay? Those folks are supposed to rubber stamp our legislation. What Franco just said there was super important. Trudeau appointed 90?
About 90. Yeah.
Wow. This is a big deal. You want to get to accountability, okay? Who is appointing our senators and judges and stuff, okay? That really matters, okay? Not surprised that 1% of our supporters think that the Senate is super awesome. Okay, do you want to touch on the Gigi there? I don't know if you have the, speaking of royalty and the Governor General, I don't know if you have the stat there. How many of our supporters are super fans of the Governor General?
Okay, so look, the Governor General's budget costs more than 30 million, right, a year, right? That's like essentially the budget for the Governor General. Look, so we said, okay, well, what do you think about his funding? What do you think should happen to the funding for the Governor General and the office of the Governor General? Cut the funding completely. Bye bye, sayonara, see you later. 57%.
That is strong. Oh my
Yep.
goodness.
Yep. Reduce funding, 37%. Okay. Freeze funding, 4%. Increase, it was almost zero. I didn't even write a percentage down. I just put almost zero. It was so low. It was like literally a rounding error. Like someone sneezed, tripped, and accidentally clicked the button. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm so
Okay.
sorry if I'm not really that sorry, but I apologize if I come off pretty bad here. Uh I'm just can I dig up? Okay, but like look, here's what I always say, okay? Like regardless of where you fall on the debate of the monarchy, right? Regardless of if you're in support of the monarchy, you're agnostic, you don't really know, or you're super against the monarchy, regardless of where you lie, I think all Canadians should be so upset about how the Governor General, really for a long time, the role of the office of the Governor General has been absolutely wasting taxpayers' money. And it's not just the current Governor General, right? It's this has been a problem for so long. But I mean, obviously there has been a lot of current breaking news stories about Governor General Mary Simon's wasteful spending, right? You had the $100,000 on airplane food during a 6 day, like a week long trip to the Middle East. Beef Wellington with Raju, beef Carpaccio. Remember that, Chris? Or the $71,000 on limos in Iceland when the hotel was like a 10-minute walk away from the main conference center, right? Or like think of some of the crazy perks that governors general get, even when they leave office, where their annual pension is 150 grand a year, regardless of how long they serve, or the fact that a former governor general can bill taxpayers up to $200,000 every year for the rest of their lives and up to 6 months after their death.
It's
So that's
200,000?
yeah, it's up to 200 grand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I said on an earlier podcast it was 100 grand, and I was already mad about that. Oh my gosh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, so like look,
Okay.
this is why I say like regardless of where you land on the monarchy debate, like I think all Canadians should be frustrated with this like absolute waste of money that's going on.
Yeah. I can just speak personally, okay? Canada is a constitutional monarchy. I'm a huge history nerd, okay? I'm literally like this is my coffee mug today. Okay? Okay? There's Will and Kate, okay? I get it. I get that it's a function of our parliamentary system and our democracy, but we do not need to blow money like this. In fact, we had this really funny campaign where we went around and we took pictures of people wearing a t-shirt saying, I'd be Governor General for a loonie, like $1. Our system allows for that. We could literally do that. We do not need to have
Yeah.
the king's representative here in Canada blowing this kind of cash.
Living like a king,
Oh,
right? And
crazy.
like you made a joke like, oh, I'd be governor general for a loony. Well, the governor general's annual salary is $378,000.
Okay. That's just
And
obscene.
they take a pay raise every single year, just like our members of parliament.
That's just obscene. And keep in mind also, you mentioned the airplane food thing, and that was really fun where we both got to learn how to pronounce things like beef carpaccio together. That was a fun afternoon. That was when the Governor General was traveling. Where? Why? They don't have to. They're
Yeah,
literally the
it
crown.
was
They don't. I'm
they were
dead
going to
serious.
Dubai, right? They're supposed to be the king's represent, or I guess at the time the queen's representative in Canada, right? But like, why are they going to all these excursions outside of the United Kingdom? Like, look, if you're going to make the argument to me that the governor general has to go to the United Kingdom to meet and do official business with the crown, okay, make the argument, right? I think reasonable people can hash that out. But like, why are we paying to send the governor general to these conferences in other countries when we already pay for a huge bloated diplomatic service?
Big
Right?
time.
Like we already have Global Affairs Canada, right? We already have a bunch of diplomats. So why are Canadian taxpayers paying for the governor general to go to these conferences in other countries?
Well, Franco, the people of Global Affairs Canada are busy trying to find grants for gender studies in Peruvian rock music.
Oh,
Like,
that's
have some
actually a different
respect.
agency. That's actually a different agency. Yeah. There's so many agencies with kinky spending that it's getting hard to keep track. Hey, let me just speaking of kinky spending, okay? So, 99% of Canadian Taxpayers Federation supporters said it is crucial for the government to cut wasteful spending. 99%, right? Good segue. And I'm going to continue that segue right into balancing the budget, okay? So, you probably heard that Carney is planning to add $225 billion to the debt over the next 4 years. That's almost $100 billion more than what even Trudeau was planning. 94% of CTF supporters oppose that. And then we asked, and this is actually really interesting to me, and I really am happy about these results. We asked, how fast should the government balance the budget? Okay. 49% said immediately. Immediately. Within 2 to 5 years, 33%. 5 to 10 years, 13%. More than 10 years, only 1.5%. But immediately was by far the most popular answer, and then 33% within a short period of time. So people are done with politicians and their debt fueled spending sprees. People are done with politicians racking up the credit card bills. People are done with all the interest charges on the debt. People are so sick and tired of federal politicians wasting their money, hiking their taxes, and sticking their kids and grandkids with a massive debt bill that they're going to have to be paying back for the rest of their lives.
Big time. And I think the message has gotten through on this whole, oh, where do you want to cut first? Money for a food for orphans or, help for little old ladies. I think that the government isn't getting away with that messaging anymore. I think the message of the waste is really getting through because I even hear people talk about like your favorite toy show in Germany that we had to spend money on. I hear people
What was
talk
that
about
called?
I don't know, name escapes me. So gross. All this is to say, folks, is that what Franco's doing here is really important. He's pointing out that the federal government is constantly wasting your money, and this is why we have now a doubled debt. And didn't you say the interest on the debt is like $1 billion a week?
Yeah, more than $1 billion a week.
Okay. That's like burning a hospital down every week.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how much that's costing us. All right. Let's get a little bit of hope going here. Do you want to go to the looking forward part? How did we ask the question exactly? And where are people finding their points of light and hope?
Well, yeah. You know what, Chris? Let's kind of wrap it up, right? We're gonna get to a couple look forwards, but we also asked people who they thought were the most effective premier over
Okay.
the last year. Okay, so we asked our supporters like, who do you think was the most effective premier? And the winner was Daniel Smith, 73%.
73.
in
Wow.
Alberta.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not I'm
And it
not
was like
actually
by
surprised.
far, like massively ahead of the next place. But Danielle Smith,
I
73%
will
most
point
effective
out
premier.
that she did make good on a huge campaign promise, and we got a big income tax cut.
Income tax cut.
Big one. And so now for the first $60,000 worth of earnings, you're paying 8% provincial income tax on that. To give you a comparison, in Nova Scotia, it's 14. Okay? Huge difference. So I'm not actually surprised that she got a big win there.
Least effective premier, we also asked. And the the winner of that dubious award was BC's Premier David Eby, 43%. Yeah, least effective premier, David Eby, 43% out BC. In second place for the least effective premier, Ontario. Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Yep. Ford
That
came in
actually
second
kind of
for least effective
surprises
premier.
me.
There you go.
Interesting.
Interesting.
See, for folks who don't know, and we've got a brand new, wonderful new Ontario director, Noah. He's taking charge real soon there in Ontario as our director, and he's fighting the good fight. A lot of folks may not realize that Ontario Premier Doug Ford, even though he calls himself a conservative, he's racking up the debt too. The Ontario debt alone is costing Ontario taxpayers like $300 million a week in interest. Burn down 300 houses. That's how much interest you're paying just on the provincial debt. And that's with Doug Ford in charge there in Ontario. So I'm a little bit surprised by that because I thought that he'd get a bit better numbers. All right, those are interesting. Really interesting. Who is this? Do we know who the second favorite was?
No, I didn't write it down.
Okay,
It
that's
was it
fine.
was like I mean Smith got 73%. It was like nobody was even close.
If I were a betting lady, I would bet it would probably be Scott Moe, next door in Saskatchewan, if I had to make a wild bet. But I will go back and check our survey results. Okay, so going forward, where are people saying that folks should focus when they're being a tax fighter?
Yeah, there's three things.
Okay,
Well, I mean, a couple, two of the top three are kind of the same. Really, they're all kind of the same. And look, so the number one issue that our supporters said that we got to focus on is debt and government borrowing. That was the number one thing. That was the most popular result. And like, of course, right, the Trudeau government doubled the debt in less than a decade, right? As we've mentioned, interest charges are costing taxpayers more than $1 billion every week, right? I think all parents and grandparents want to leave their kids and grandkids with a better financial future. But a baby born today, she's crying because she's on the hook for about 30 grand in federal government debt alone. So that was the number one issue that people flagged. Like, we got to fight debt and government borrowing. And I think I agree with them. The number two most important was cost of living. Cost of living, right? And like, look, taxes are making life more expensive. Government debt and money printing made life more expensive. Though that's why I meant they're all kind of the same. And like, look, the fastest, the simplest, and the most efficient way for governments to make all aspects of life more affordable is just to stop taking people's money in the first place, right? But like, look, more than 42% of the average family's budget is going to taxes to all levels of government, right? The average family's biggest cost is not food, it's not clothing, it's not housing, it's taxes. And that makes me want to throw up. Okay. Um, and the third most important issue to fight, and again, it's all kind of related, is wasteful spending. So you
big
go
time.
debt. So number one, debt, government borrowing. Number two, cost of living. Number three, wasteful spending.
Huge. And I'm so glad that we got such strong responses from our survey. Can I just ask, does this jazz you up? Like you said at the top of the show, we've got the fall session of Parliament coming back. All the kids are coming back to school, so to speak. We've got all these MPs coming back. They're really kind of setting their agenda for how they want to handle things going forward. And it's not just in the House of Commons. There's a lot of this stuff that is hashed out at committee. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That's where a lot of the action is. I know you've presented at committee several times. I've been able to be there once before too. It's quite the place to be. But this is where changes are made. Do these survey results like kind of energize you and let you know what to fight on most?
Yeah, no, it fires me up. Number one, I mean, our people are passionate, right? And like I mentioned, we had tens of thousands of people fill out the survey. So, I mean, just the fact that people are willing to take time out of their busy days and lives to give us some input, like it means a lot to all of us. Like we know you guys are all really busy, and yeah, thank you for that. But yeah, it fires me up. Like when you tell me that 99% say we got to go cut government spending or government waste, sorry, like yeah, let's get after it. I mean, 92% of our supporters oppose MP pensions. Like, let's go, right? Like, why do they need a pension? Like, save for your own retirement.
Yeah. And, I
You
think their
know,
CV's
like
doing pretty well, you know?
yeah, it fires me up. Absolutely does. But I mean, most importantly, right? Because like, look, it's such a clown show in Ottawa that like there's so many things that you can go after, right? There's so many different things. Like every day they're doing dumb stuff. Every day they're taking more of your money. Every day they're doing dumb stuff. Well, almost every day, right? Every now and then it's April Fool's Day and they take more of your money and give it to themselves. But look, so by like taking the time to give us your input, like you kind of give us our marching orders, like what issues we have to focus on. So this is extremely valuable, and yeah, it fires me up when I see 92% of our supporters opposing pensions for members of parliament. Not like, oh, scale it back, like no, like end it. Like yeah, that fires me up. Why should they be getting a pension?
It makes me want to grab the pitchfork. My favorite is probably it's a tie between defund the media, defund the CBC, like stop government funding the media. But I love the accountability part.
Mm,
94% want referendums, 89% want recall legislation.
let's
Like
go.
that's right there, man. Okay, thank you so much, Franco, for breaking all these
No,
down.
we're
Oh,
not
sorry.
done.
We're not
We're
done.
not
Okay,
done.
sorry. I
So I want to
apologize.
end on look, like sometimes it feels like you're banging your head against the wall, right? Like, come on, let's be honest with ourselves, right? And I think everyone watching or listening, they probably feel the same way sometimes, right? And you kind of ask yourself, like, are we making a difference or are we just giving ourselves a bloody nose, you know? And but sometimes you got to like stop and smell the roses, so to speak, and think about everything that our supporters and team have done over the past year. So we asked our supporters like, hey, what was the biggest taxpayer victory? Because we had some huge taxpayer victories over the last year. Like, let's not kid ourselves, right? Like if you were to tell me, I don't know, 10 months ago that Canadians were going to force the Liberals to back down on their own consumer carbon tax, I would have told you you're crazy, right? Or the capital gains tax fight, where we sued the government and then they backed down on the undemocratic and illegal capital gains tax hike that they wanted to put through, right? So we had some major taxpayer victories. So Chris, I'm just going to ask you, what was your favorite taxpayer victory over the year?
Right here.
Yeah, me
Right
too,
here.
man.
So, yeah, nice. So, for folks who aren't watching, we're holding up Franco's book, Axing the Tax, The Rise and Fall of Canada's Carbon Tax. I also have in my other hand here Mark Carney's book that he wrote while he was UN Special Envoy on Climate Change
Mm.
about how much he loves carbon taxes. And I can't stress enough that this was a huge victory. It felt a little funny because, Pierre Poilievre was pushing to axe the tax so much, and then the election went the way it did, but it was Mark Carney that reduced it to zero and then got rid of it. So at the end of the day, what matters is that this was a win for taxpayers. And to your point exactly, it was because of tax fighters all speaking as one that made this happen, that made that tax get axed. So we're saving around 20 cents per liter of gasoline right now. To put that another way, you're saving like 13 bucks a minivan, 20 bucks a pickup truck, and $200 in diesel every time a trucker's filling up his big rigs to deliver our food and supplies. That's huge. That's a huge tax fighter win.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my big win for this year.
Yeah.
You?
And
Same?
and yeah, yeah, I mean, it is the same. Like, man, like not too long ago, people thought we were crazy for fighting the carbon tax, right? All the elites telling us just, sit down, shut up, and pay your carbon tax. But, thankfully, our people didn't do that at all. They kept fighting, and you know what? It would have been easier for them to just have taken it. But, I'm just so happy to have, everyone on the team and our tax fighters and supporters out there who just never gave in to that BS. So yeah, no, the fight against the carbon tax definitely my favorite victory over the last year. The capital gains tax increase that we stopped it and forced the government to back down like that was also a big win because like look, like that was a financial sucker punch to so many Canadians who worked their entire lives to start businesses, to get their neighbors good paying jobs, and then also just to save for their own retirement. And the government wanted to impose this capital gains tax increase. And then, like, look, the government didn't even bring in the legislation, let alone pass or proclaim the legislation into law. And then you have these unelected bureaucrats at the CRA who are going to enforce this tax increase and take billions of dollars from Canadians illegally. And of course, at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, our great in-house lawyer, Devin Drover, we launched a legal challenge to take the CRA to court over this. And then exactly 1 week after our legal challenge launch date, the federal government backed down. So that was a great one. And you know what? our CTF supporters agree with us, Chris. Their number one taxpayer victory was ending the consumer carbon tax. Folks, we know the carbon tax fight is not over, but it is important for us to, acknowledge the fact that that is a huge win. And clearly CTF supporters are saying that too. The number two victory of the year, according to this survey, was the capital gains tax victory. There
That's
you
a
go.
really big deal. It was also affecting doctors in
Yeah.
a strange way, in the way that they were supposed to be saving for their own retirement and stuff. Like that was going to cause like a flight to the United States, like brain drain. Like that was one of the dumbest things that the government tried to pull. And to your point exactly, for folks who don't know, the CRA just started enforcing it without it
They
even
said
going
they're
through.
gonna, yeah,
Yeah.
they said they're gonna enforce it, even though, yeah, it was such a disaster, such a mess.
That was crazy, but what I loved is how quickly it turned around. Like you, I think you and Devin made your announcement, you did your press conference and stuff, and like a week later they're like, "Okay, never mind, nothing to see here." I'd run the other direction too, frankly, if I were them. And I heard that saying we're going to fight you. All right, so now do you want me to wrap up the show and explain to our good listeners how they can find more information?
Take us home, Chris.
Okay, folks, if you like what we've been talking about, if you like fighting for taxpayers, if you like not spending so much at the gas pump, if you are sick and tired of the government taking more than 40% of your income, okay? Join our fight, okay? It's fun, it's effective, okay? We get results, we get wins, and we have a bit of fellowship along the way because we all stay in touch with each other. We even send out quizzes. Franco, I was calling quiz winners last week, like
Mm,
just phoning them up. It was the
that's
funnest.
awesome.
It was the funnest time ever. And we were
Yeah, I did
actually
that too on the gun grab survey we did.
I love it. And we're sending them copies of your book for
Oh,
free
good.
in the mail. It's wonderful. So, folks, head on over to our website, taxpayer.com. Okay. How you get in with us is sign one of the petitions. Okay. So, sign the petition to, defund the CBC, or sign the petition to get rid of the industrial carbon tax, sign the petition to cut government spending and fight the debt. And now you're on our mailing list. Now you're part of the Tax Fighter Army. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, share this with your friends.